Hello everyone, this is another lesson in my New Testament is Fake series on the Yalak Emet channel, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon for April 7, 2022. This lesson is titled The Judgment of the Earth. Reading from the book of 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 10 and 12 to 13. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burnt up. When I was a child, we were taught very scary lessons about the destruction of the earth because of all the evil that's on earth. Christians are going to be raptured away and go to heaven. Then the people left behind are going to be burnt up with the earth being burnt up. Now you will find a little different teaching going on out there, because some will now teach that the air will be burnt up and a lot of oxygen burnt up because of these great weapons that armies and countries have built. But they put it forward back then as what I would now call the judgment of the earth. So in order to punish people and bring judgment on people, God has to also bring judgment on the earth, as if the earth itself sinned against God. So the earth is going to be destroyed, burnt up with fire. So now people will talk about the elements, like I just said, being burnt up and the clouds being sucked up and so on, and the fires that God, that are going to be burnt up with the weapons. But back when I was a child, and it's still being taught today, because that's what I was taught in Jamaica with lots of people. All the Christians learned that in Jamaica when I was younger. When I came to Canada, they were still teaching it here. But it again now shows to me that the whole approach to teaching God from the New Testament is based in deception. Because even just teach it in such a way that God's going to burn up the earth was not correct, because the way they taught it to us was that the fire was going to come from God magically creating fire out of heaven and blasting the earth with it, and then the earth will just be on fire. I remember one preacher when I was younger, a teenager, was saying the earth is going to be reeling and rocking like a drunken man. Then it would be cast into hell. So he's saying the earth was going to be burnt up by God directly, not by weapons of war, and it would be cast inside of hell, and it would be burnt up there until it disintegrates. Nothing would be left of it. It again helps to show that the New Testament is fake. That's why I'm saying you have to unlearn a lot of the things that you were taught about the Bible and about the New Testament. Because while the Old Testament also has some problems, it seems to have more respect for many more people than the New Testament. So if one were going to choose between New Testament and Old Testament, it would make more sense to go with the Old Testament, even with its problems. Now, if we go on to verse 12 and 13 from 2 Peter, it says, "Looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of God, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness." So because they taught us that the earth would be burnt up by God and be cast into hell, or the lake of fire, and that it would be no more, then if you're getting new heavens and a new earth, that means it is a physically different one, physically different earth that we'd be living on. And then they told us about, from the book of Revelations, new heaven and earth coming down from heaven, from God out of heaven. So it gives you the idea of a brand new physical earth and heaven to look up at when you're looking up at the sky. The same way, if your house burns down and you build a new house, you know it is not the same one, even if it's on the same spot of land. So the New Testament teachers, as well as the New Testament itself, from Peter in this case, and the book of Revelations, presents in a careless manner New Testament doctrine of the newness of the earth and the destruction of the one we are now on, in a way that lets one have to say eventually goodbye to this physical terra firma we call earth. Goodbye to this physical terra firma we call earth. This is not according to the Torah, and it helps to show that the New Testament is fake. Now let's go over to the Old Testament and look at what it actually teaches. Now Paul at some point had said, in speaking of the gospel and the teachings about God and Christ and so on, that you should give a clear sounding symbol, or the symbol should give a very clear sound so you know what's being sounded out. Yet the New Testament makes things so unclear so that people get confused. And the New Testament teachers, they don't usually dig as teachers who teach the Torah. Torah teachers are usually deeper, while New Testament teachers are more shallow. They're more surface kind of teachers most times. Of course, there are some who get deep into the Old Testament, but most times they don't. So that means that the New Testament, spread across the world, encourages less searching of the scriptures. That seems to me to be an inherent part of New Testament approach and conduct. So right away, that is a strike against the New Testament as far as I see it, because if the book itself does not let you dig further or as deep as one can go, and does not unlock more of the deeper things that people knew before there was a New Testament in the Roman times, that means the book is designed to limit the reader. It is a hunchback, bent over Quasimodo kind of book. It does not encourage the deepest search for the Bible reader. And in a world gone so bad, the New Testament then giving this kind of approach helps to ensure that people who read it find God a whole lot less, if God can be found in the Bible. Joel chapter 3 in verse 20. But Judah shall dwell forever, and Jerusalem from generation to generation. So we know Joel is dealing with end-time things, the restoration of Israel. So when this prophet Joel says Judah is going to dwell forever, means they're going to dwell without stopping. Their dwelling will not come to an end. The word dwell, yashab, from H3427, means to remain, sit, abide. How will they abide as Judah on the earth in their land, if the earth will be burnt up in hell and disintegrate and become nothing? Had they taught us this from we were children and youngsters, and new Christians that Joel said this, we would have had a whole lot clearer understanding over the years, because we would have right away said, this does not sound good what they're teaching in the New Testament. It would drive people to search more. But you took all those years to search to get to this point, just like myself, because only New Testament teachings were pushed heavily by all these pastors that you heard from and the evangelists who traveled from country to country and from city to city and continent to continent. This is a planned design of spreading the New Testament. Don't think that the Romans would have written a New Testament and not be doing it still, even 1,000 or 2,000 years later. The only reason why people would call themselves missionaries or be anointed as missionaries and chosen and so on, and make it their duty to teach only the New Testament, the millions and millions of them who did that as they traveled on planes and boats and ships across the world, and ignore in a royal manner the Torah or the Old Testament, is because they were set up and conditioned to do so. And anytime anyone wants to push New Testament all over the earth that the Romans made, according to what we find in history, then the New Testament would have to be not from God, it is fake. Because somebody is starting up organizations, church organizations, religious organizations, and pushing the New Testament and making so many people travel when they just find out about God. Travel when they just find out about God and just choose to give their heart to God. And automatically, these people, for the most part, almost 100%, are choosing New Testament. There has to be a serious problem with this. This cannot be the work of God. If governments in so many countries are allowing the setup of so many churches that teach New Testament only, it means the government does not have a problem with this. And when the government does not have a problem with your choice of only one part of the book, it must come across to you that the government likes this. And if the government likes it, and the world is still in this condition, and their countries are still in this condition, there's got to be a problem. Think it through for yourself. So Judah is going to dwell there forever. That means for all times. And Jerusalem from generation to generation. That means the generation will not be cut off because the world is being destroyed and burnt into a lake of fire to nothing. It calls Jerusalem as a place that will continue from generation to generation, because Jerusalem will still exist from generation to generation. Jerusalem will not be burnt up with the earth that is burnt up in the New Testament lake of fire. The New Testament is fake. Jerusalem will continue to be. Micah chapter 4 verse 1 to 2. But in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established in the top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow unto it. In the last days, not that the earth will be burnt into a lake of fire, into nothingness, until even its mountains get burnt up into the fire and become no more, so that mountains do not exist anymore. But the prophet before a Roman New Testament came said that there will still be a mountain that the house of the Lord will be set up on. It will be established there. Establish. Not something that is disintegrated, that is burnt up, that is destroyed. It will be established upon that mountain, because that mountain will still exist on the earth. And that's where we know mountains exist. It is on the earth. It will be firmly established there, firmly fixed, in the top of the mountains. And even Jesus said at one point, no man just sets up a candle and puts it under a bushel, but they set it up high like a light that should be seen upon a hill. So if it's going to be established, the house of the Lord, up on a mountain, that means it is supposed to be seen. Now, there's problems with seeing, because who's going to see it if the other people are raptured who are righteous and gone to heaven to live there, and the other people who did not get saved have been burnt up in hell in the lake of fire with the earth? So there will still be people living on the earth to see it. So this whole rapture deal is wrong, even for Israelites who are teaching that. If I would teach rapture, I would teach it in a different way and say that we are being raptured or caught away from out of our bondage and out of this present Babylon back into the land of the Lord. That's the rapture or the catching away, as we are caught away into a deliverance by God back to the land of God. And the people shall flow unto it. So there will still be a lot of people, not this hell that they taught us from the New Testament. The New Testament is a great deception. People shall flow unto it. If the people were burnt up in the lake of fire, they will not be flowing, they will be dead. But they're going to flow onto that mountain where the house of the Lord is established. Verse 2, and many nations shall come. That means many nations will still be on the earth. But Peter said the earth and all its works and everything in it will be burnt up. All its works includes all the works that man did when man built structures and houses and so on, and all the works that the animals and the birds did when they dug their homes in the ground, or birds digging their stuff in a tree and so on, and the ants digging their homes in the earth. All those works will be destroyed that are connected to the earth. Even the works of the Lord, when he made things on day 1, day 2, day 3, all the way to day 6, and then rested from his works on the 7th day. Peter is saying all the works that are there and that have to do with the earth will also come to an end. It will be destroyed. Peter is lying. We get on Paul's case all a lot, but here I'm showing you Peter is also a deceiver, along with all the New Testament teachers who taught those things over the years and continue to do so. So the nations that come will say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord and to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. But they told us that after the rapture, the paths of the Lord, or the doctrine of the gospel of Christ that brings salvation, is already done. Too late, mercy gone, are the words from one song that I remember a little bit. So you can't be saved after that. You are just lost. Yet people will still be taught the ways of the Lord, and they will say, we will walk in his paths, for the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. So Jerusalem will still be there. But how can the law go forth of Jerusalem? One would think that it would go forth, the word of the Lord would go forth from out of heaven, since the righteous ones have been raptured there. But instead, this says the word of the Lord will still be on earth and be going forth out of Zion on the earth. The New Testament is fake. And this goes to show that even with Christianity saying the law is done, the law will still be in effect, because verse 3, which I didn't plan on reading, says, and he shall judge among many people and rebuke strong nations afar off. He can only judge and rebuke if there is a law system that is still operating on the earth, the law that is in the Torah. So even at the end, law will still be going on. Final verse from the book of the prophet Isaiah, chapter 45, which I called recently the prophet of return, Isaiah. Look what he says here as he talks about our return some more. I will return some more. Isaiah 45 verse 17. But Israel shall be saved in the Lord with an everlasting salvation. He shall not be ashamed nor confounded, world without end. He's telling you in plain language, the world will never come to an end. So forget the New Testament doctrine of Peter and the apostles in the New Testament and the New Testament evangelists that wooed us when we were children, and they had big multi-thousand gatherings with many people coming, and they traveled to little Jamaica and had all the money to set up these great conferences when Jamaicans were struggling to pay their rent and to buy food and to buy khaki clothes for uniform for their children to go to school. But these people had money just to stay in nice hotels and rent the stadium and so on, and big halls, and renting the stadium, not just a little storefront or a little warehouse. You are trying to start a church and you can just barely afford to rent a storefront or some abandoned warehouse. But they come, and the first time they show up as their evangelistic team of like 10 or 20 come with them or more, they can rent the actual stadium in Kingston for so much money. And you're telling me the same Roman Empire that wrote the New Testament is not behind the New Testament? And the gospel of the New Testament brought no goodness and no healing to Jamaica. Not for our bodies, not for our spirits, not for our mind, and not for our finances. Because the New Testament, there is a problem with it, and the people who brought the New Testament teachings to us. But the prophet says, your world will never end. World without end is what it says. So then the New Testament Peter is lying, because the world will not be cast into the lake of fire like they taught us. And it says Israel shall be saved with an everlasting salvation. And the everlasting salvation is consistent with the prophet's next line when he says your world will never end. So your everlasting salvation will always last forever in your world, which will never end. Earth will always be here. So the judgment of the earth taught by New Testament teachers who got it from Peter, it's just all wrong. Yalak Emmett channel, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon. The New Testament is fake. Thank you for listening. Check it out for yourself, not just your teacher, because they checked it out. That's what they came up with. But go check it out now for yourself. Have a good week.